Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. We are a weekly podcast focusing on the paranormal, the supernatural, and the metaphysical. Join us for thought-provoking discussions on paranormal phenomena, conspiracies, and all things unexplained as we talk to researchers and investigators about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs and aliens, urban legends, cryptids, and so much more. Please be sure to like and subscribe and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. You can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. Thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. So grab yourself a drink and a snack, turn the lights off on the way back, find yourself a nice comfy spot, and enjoy this episode of Paranomaly. Stay with us, folks. Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in tonight. We have a great show coming up on Beyond Disclosure. We are talking with Karin Wilkinson. Now, Karin Wilkinson has been visited by non-human entities for as long as she can remember, but these are not friendly entities. This is not a love and light experience we are talking about. Karin has had unspeakable things done to her body, all while being groomed since she was a little girl by a handler and developing feelings for said being. This is just a tip of the proverbial iceberg and the lifelong nightmare that Karin will talk about on this show. Also, I just want everybody to know that we are Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure on the UNX network. I just wanted to bring that up because I don't plug our favorite channel much at all. So I am going to start doing that so that we can get things more rolling. So everybody go check out UNX network and follow for all their content. We've also heard about experiences that were, for the most part, on a more positive note. But tonight, we're going to delve into a different, more negative type of experience. And I think this is very important because it's not always this positive Zen message type of experience. This one is definitely not that. Karin, welcome on our show, and please tell us a little bit about yourself. And yeah.
Well, Todd and Jim, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you guys tonight. And I've got the chat room up and I see some friends in there already. Thank you for the support. I see Reggie in there and some other friends. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. Happy to be here and looking forward to our chat. So I'm Karin Wilkinson, and the book is Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest, and it is available exclusively at lamarzulli.com. That's LAMARZULLI.com. You can find me at my website, KarinWilkinsonAuthor.com, or on social media. If y'all can find me there, you can link into any of those places from there. I love to hear from people. Anyone listening tonight, if you want to just chat, to reach out, to talk about your experiences, just know you're not alone. You can shoot me a message through my website. Those go directly to me, to my email inbox, and it just gives us a chance to get together, know we're not alone, have that sense of community, and I love that. So thanks for everyone who's listening. So the book is about my experiences, my lifelong experiences, what I experienced, who and what they are, and what I believe their intentions are with us to date.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Karin, when did all this start? Like, take us back to the beginning. How old was you?
This all started from my earliest memories. I don't have memories of a time when this wasn't happening to me. I was being taken from kidnapped, abducted from the security of what I thought was the security of my home, the security of my room, the security of my bedroom, against my will, without my permission, from my earliest memories. And I know you did mention that you've had some other people on who had different viewpoints and different experiences, and I want to make it very clear I don't disparage anyone else's opinions or views on this. I think it takes a lot of courage to come forward and just share experiences like this, because they are not well received, and it's not something that people even really like to talk about, and I understand that. But from my point of view, what happened to me was certainly against my will, and me and so many others like me who've been through this, that I've worked with and talked with over the years, hundreds and hundreds of people have been through similar experiences. I've had people reach out and say, I just read your book and I read my life story. More friends than I can count that have had similar experiences. So
many people have the same negative experience that you had.
Exactly. It's kind of a, when you're being taken against your will. If you were to go and kidnap a 5-year-old, you would be put in jail. There's nothing benevolent about the actions of kidnapping a little child. Or look at cattle mutilations, having unwanted implants put in the body. They're not benevolent actions,
right, and definitely not from our moral framework. It's possible, that there could be many moral frameworks.
Sure.
Not that would make it moral, but it might not be seen as. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, for a child to be taken against their will, there's just I don't care whose moral framework it's in. For that child and that family, it's not going to fit. But that being said, I've had positive experiences too. I had an amazing angelic encounter. So you have good and you have the evil, you have the fallen and the non-fallen, you have the light and the dark, and that balance exists everywhere. And so we have to understand that that's there, and be able to understand that different people are going to have different kinds of experiences, and I understand that. So
and on that point though, just because I want to zoom in on this, do you have the perspective that it's a kind of binary, that ETs are in general bad and that they're positive? Or from your perspective, what is it? Does it seem like there's a binary, or does it seem like there might be, many different dispositions? Some might be half bad, a little bit good, or just have some questionable intentions. Some are definitely evil. Others seem, maybe like they're kind of semi-benevolent. Others seem maybe angelic. Or what's like the landscape from your perspective as far as?
That's a good question. Based on my extensive research and the extensive research of others, and the thousands of hours and people that I've spoken with and worked with and gone through, it is a very one side or the other situation. You have good benevolent entities and you have fallen or malevolent entities. There is, you can go through and look at good and evil in any type of light that you want, but it's still one side or the other. Whether you want to add shades of gray or not to it, that's up to everyone's choice, and everyone's opinions and perspectives can fall into that. But there really is one or the other. There is no kind of middle of the road when it comes to this. And I've had experiences with both, and I can absolutely say that what I've seen, and the other abductees that I've been taken with, and the other entities that I've been there with, and the people working with them, it's a massive, extremely large operation that's going on, and none of the people that I was with that were being taken were happy about what was happening to them. I have never experienced someone who was overjoyed or elated or even a little bit happy about what was happening.
So that's what you've noticed. So some abduction researchers will say it seems like 50-50.
Have those researchers been taken?
I think in general, no. I think this particular researcher was John Carpenter, that I recall him saying this. I don't think he was an abductee himself.
Okay.
But in the people that they encounter, which again is kind of skewed because it's normally people who have trouble that go to a hypnotherapist. But so in your perspective, you think that most people who go through this have a negative experience, by far negative experience.
It depends on what you're talking about. Are you talking about a benevolent being or a malevolent being? And, if it's a benevolent being, then they're going to have a good experience. If it's a malevolent, a fallen being, then it's not going to be a good experience. So I can only speak from my experience and the experiences I've had and that other people have shared with me through the extensive amount of research and writing that I've done. But you definitely you're gonna see both. So it's one of those things that everyone's gonna have a different outlook and a different opinion on it. And just to be able to look, it depends on how you're looking at it too. I'm looking at it from a biblical perspective. I believe the Bible is the inerrant word of God, and that is my guidebook. That's not to get preachy or Christiany or anything like that, or religious-y, because I am not any of those things. I'm a researcher, and I work through a lot of ancient texts and scripts and scrolls and information like that. So,
and that's a big, part of this, the religious perspective, is upheld by many people, and it's certainly valid. We haven't had anyone on yet from this perspective, so we're definitely interested in.
Right. And there's just a lot of people who want to, speak from research, but not experience. And so there are different angles that people come in with when we're speaking about it. And that's, that's great, because we need everyone, boots on the ground in this, helping share what's going on and helping make these conversations okay to have. So it's important that we have information coming in from actual experiencers, actual abductees, and then from researchers who are helping gather that information, like what you guys are doing, and putting it together. And
absolutely.
So it's, when you get into these kinds of specific questions, it gets a little sticky, because everyone's going to fall into a different place in it, and for different reasons. So hopefully that answers your question.
No, yeah, that's
okay.
Hey, Karin, I have a quick question here before we really delve into this. You spoke about religion, and religion is tough when it comes to this field, and it's tough when it comes to ghosts and hauntings and all this kind of stuff. But in UFOs and aliens, it definitely seems like it would be extremely tough, because the Bible says that there's only one God who created man in his own image. So now we spiral into, well, wait a minute, our book says one thing, but this is different.
No, it's not. It absolutely fits into the Bible 100%. Chapter and verse, from Genesis to Revelation.
How does it fit in?
There's explanation for every single thing, and I write extensively again about that in the book.
How does it fit in, though? Explain to me how it fits in if it says that God created man in his own image, and then here we are looking how we are, but then you have aliens that are different.
How different are they? How different are the ones that you've seen?
Well, I don't know. I've never met any.
Okay.
But it's,
and what do you consider different? Do you think because I'm taller or shorter or blonde or brunette or male or female that makes me not in the same image?
Well, no, you're human. So a human entity is different. So a gray alien, if we seen a gray alien that looks nothing like us, then how can somebody in the religious that read the religion all the time, they say, I have an open mind, so to me, it doesn't matter. But someone that is really religious, how do they, how do I want to put this? How do they determine, because they're going to say, no, that's, that goes against.
Who's going to say that? Because no one who I know who's been trained, schooled, and understands philosophy, religion across multiple religious texts and across multiple ancient texts would say that. They would all say, yes, this absolutely fits right into it.
Let's just take the lay person that doesn't know any of this. This worked with War of the Worlds back in the day when he published that live on air. And people were freaking out because it turned into a religious thing. I can't believe that he actually never got in trouble. Well, maybe he did, and I just didn't read it. But that is what I'm talking about. I'm trying to figure the difference between like the normal church going person. And then we know that people like yourself and a great many others that research all these things, ancient aliens, things like that, and then they make that conclusion. But to the normal layperson, I would not think that. I think that there would be a issue. I've asked religious people about aliens before, and they're like, "Well, no, they don't exist because God said that we are made after His image." So,
Okay, that's not so. So you have to get the biblical liturgy straight too for that. And so there's a couple of things here. First of all, He said, "Let us make them in our image," which means we're similar. It doesn't mean that they're humans, and it doesn't mean that we're identical. It means that we're an image of, a similarity to. And also, there were differences because He was starting man as something completely different from the angelic beings who had at that time revolted, and a certain number of them had fallen away. And Satan, Nakash, who was in the garden, he was said to be the most beautiful of all of them. That music followed him wherever he went, and he is the one who decided that he was going to be like God. And then that's, when all that happened. I won't go too far down that road because that's going to take us an hour. But so He created man from dust, from dirt, and that was a smack in the face because those angelic beings were here on this earth and this planet and this place before. And that birthright was given over to the new creatures that God created in their image, which means we're all similar. And of the entities that I've seen, except for the shorter grays that are like a cookie cutter because they are basically an avatar, they're not an actual normal entity, they're a created physical being. The other grays, they're different sizes and shapes. They have different facial expressions. They all look different. Same for the Nordic types and for the insectoid types and for the reptilian. They all are very unique and different, same as humans would be. But we all share certain characteristics and traits that you can find similarities across the board. So it's not for me to say, okay, in our image, how similar did you mean, God? That we're not given that information, but we have enough to know that there are similarities across the board. And this all goes back to where these entities come from, goes back to, you go to Genesis 3:15, where the Bible says, in the Garden of Eden, the Nakash, Satan, he was a fallen angel at this point. So now you've got fallen angels and non-fallen angels. This sets up the scene for what we're dealing with even today. This is where the seed war starts, where he's tempted Adam and Eve. They've been thrown out of the Garden of Eden. The proto-evangelical, the pre-incarnate Jesus is there, and God says, and he will bruise your heel and you will crush his head. And he's talking about Jesus crushing the head of the serpent, which is the Nakash. That sets up a seed war where they're now at this point, the fallen angelic being Satan and his minions are trying to stop Jesus from being born. Jump forward to Genesis 6. It says the sons of God, the B'nai Ha-Elohim. When you go into what that means, you go into the direct translations and the information about that. It means the sons of God are little g, the sons of big God. So they're the little g gods. These are the fallen, the ones that are going to fall. These are angelic beings. Saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and made of them wives, plural, of all that they chose. This is when the 200, and you can read about this more in the book of Enoch, and I outlined that a little bit too, fell supposedly on Mount Hermon. They decided to do this kamikaze mission. Basically, they fell. They went and took of them wives, traded for technology, kind of the same thing that's going on a little bit today. And they had what they called the Nephilim. People are starting to get more and more familiar with Nephilim. The mighty men of old, the giants. Some were giants, some were small. They were different types and sizes. But these were the ones that some of the Greek little g gods are identified after. And this is where this sets up this interaction now between the fallen angelic beings and the humans, which is still going on even today. So I don't know how much further you want me to go down that road, but when you get into the Bible, there it talks about chariots of fire.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
These vehicles of conveyance that God, the angels, the fallen angels, they all use the same types of things, the things we see today. In that day, they're describing something in a way that relates to what they have. So they understand what chariots are, they understand what horses and pillars and different things like that. So things are described in that way. So we misread the Bible through Western eyes instead of looking at it from the point of view and the time when it was written. But there are just verses from beginning to end that talk about these fallen entities and how they arrive in ships.
So do you think that modern day Christianity is just totally diluted and not at all the Christianity that was promoted by the apostle or Jesus and the apostles at the beginning, and the fact that the books were taken out, Enoch and things like that? And do you think that real Christianity should look nothing like the modern day Christianity, or it should be significantly different? Not to delve into this too deeply, I want to get into the experience.
Yes, and I also want to just want to say to the listeners out there and the viewers that all that we're talking about with this religious this isn't set in stone, especially for me. The Book of Enoch's not there, so if people don't understand what the Book of Enoch is, you can go reference it and look it up. I found it extremely interesting, and I wish that it would still be in the Bible. But there are a lot of books that were taken out. So what we're talking about here are good opinions on different parts of the Bible.
Exactly. And Reggie in your chat room made a good point that there's also parts that say that these angelic beings left their first estate. Their first estate was their home in a different realm. And we're in this earthly realm. They are in another realm. They have different abilities, different understanding, different knowledge. They've been around a lot longer than we are. They're a lot stronger than we are. These are things that, we know from personal experience and we know from history and historic experience. So in modern day, when you start talking about religion and Christianity, it's a very muddy waters to get into, because religion connotes so many different things, and it has nothing to do with belief systems. It has everything to do with people getting together and doing a very specific thing in an orderly fashion as they're being told. So that is a difficult word to use. And Christianity itself, the word has just been, I think you're right in that, diluted or just convoluted. And there's been, different groups that kind of program people in different ways and different directions. So I'm very careful with words like that, because for me, I really look at things from a biblical perspective and a perspective of my relationship between me and my creator. And I believe we have one creator. And I think that that's something most of us can agree on. And I'm never going to push my thoughts or belief systems down someone else's throat. I'm just going to say, look, here's the evidence. Here's the information. Decide how you feel. And if you want to talk about it more, we will, because it's just ugly when people try to just force their belief systems on others. And I don't ever, want to do that. So that being said, there are a lot of amazing books that were not included in the Bible. And, you get to the Council of Nicaea and all the different reasons that things were done. And, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall to know exactly why some of those things happened. I understand some of the reasoning behind some of it, but some of it makes no sense whatsoever. And if you want to keep a book out of the Bible to keep people from knowing the truth, Enoch will be the one to keep out, because that one's got so much good, useful information in it. And and for me, it's a salvation issue. We have enough for that. And so everything else we're just trying to piece together and figure out as it relates to our lives now, and how can we help other people just understand as well as they can and just live the best, happiest lives that they can and have an eternal life. Isn't that what everyone really wants? Is just to be happy and loved. And that's what my Father offers me. And I want that for everyone else, but I'm never going to push that down someone's throat. So in that, to that end, I think Jimmy had a good point that there is a lot of so many people going so many different directions, and it makes it very difficult to say anything about Christianity, quite honestly,
And yes, thank you, Karin, for explaining how you perceive it. That's what I was getting at. I want to see, because the Bible's interpretation is so vast, but you shed light on my question to you at the very beginning, and I thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you for allowing me that time. So and I know you wanted, so hopefully that helps people understand where all this fits in the Bible from my research, my understanding, my perspective, and that of many others, like L.A. Marzulli, if you look at this book and other books, I'm not saying go out and buy my book. You can just reach out to me and I can explain more via, email. I'm not here, I'm not trying to sell books for that purpose. I'm trying to share information. And that is my number one goal here is with the book and everything else, is to share information. And that comes from my mentor, L.A. Marzulli. But so I can go into, if you'd like, more of just the descriptions of what did happen to me, because I think that's kind of what you're wanting to get to and what your audience is.
Yeah, let's go through all that, get all the details. We're going to ask a lot of questions just to, get clarity on certain things. So this was primarily by far the gray type ETs that perform these abductions, or no?
No, I mean, the shorter, smaller grays were the ones that would be there for the actual collecting me part of the experience. Beyond that, so typically when I would be taken, it would be, especially when I was little, it would happen a lot at night. If there were other people around, like they would just be in a state of deep sleep. Like I could never wake anyone up. I could never rouse anyone. And I would just feel a change in the room. I would know when they were there. I would be so scared because I knew it was coming. I knew it was going to happen. And it's from my earliest memories. I mean, I don't have a time in my life when I don't remember them coming to take me. I'm sorry.
And now all these are conscious memories, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'd never had any kind of hypnotic work or anything like that. These are just memories I've always had. Do I remember every single time? No. Do I remember the entirety of every abduction experience? No. Some I have more clear, vivid memories than others. Some I only remember the beginning or the end or the, parts in the middle. So it just depends. And it's so many times. It's like asking someone to recall every day of their life. It's just a lot.
So on a typical experience, let's just start out with when you were younger. It was normally at night in your bedroom. So you said you would feel their presence prior to seeing them. You'd feel
usually. Sometimes if it was like, it didn't matter where I was, they would find me wherever I was. And I couldn't hide. I tried to hide. I had a sibling and I won't say names and I won't talk about anyone else's experiences except for my own, because these are personal experiences. So if I refer to someone else, I will refer to them very vaguely. But I had a sibling who said to me, "You can't hide. They can see us through the house." And this is a 5 and an 8-year-old having a conversation, about entities. We don't know who they are. We don't know what they are. Back in that time frame, I'm a little older than you guys probably. We didn't know what they were. We didn't have vocabulary for what they were. We didn't have podcasts and TV shows and books and things, and certainly not available to a 5-year-old.
So did you even talk? Did you even look at them as extraterrestrials or did you perceive?
I didn't know what an extraterrestrial was. I was 5 years old.
You didn't.
They were the little ones that came to get me, and some of them smelled bad, and they were funny looking, and they were scary, and they scared me. And these ones were all kind of the same. They were about 4 feet tall, maybe. They had the big bulbous heads, the black eyes that just looked like a screen. They didn't look like an eye. Their eyes didn't move. They were just stationary like a screen. They didn't have any kind of an eye movement in there. They had really skinny necks that didn't seem like they should be able to hold that head up. Thin bodies. Some of them smelled like a cross between sulfur and a dead animal and excrement.
Some of them smelled different. I remember.
Some didn't have any smell at all. So I think it had to do with the rate of, or how, like the skin that they were made of or whatever. I don't know. I have no idea why they smell different. That's just pure speculation on my part. But there would be an accompanying low hum that would just get lower and lower. And I would be put into a state of waking paralysis where I was awake and I was aware, but I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't fight. I couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything to, defend myself or to try to wake anyone up. And even when I was able to scream, no one heard me. And as that hum got lower and lower, it just felt like my body vibrated into like a bazillion pieces. At that point, I would be levitated off of a bed and through a ceiling or a window or down a hall and out through a wall, just out of the house in ways that don't make sense to us, because they can manipulate space, time, energy, and matter in ways that, it doesn't fit into our little paradigm. So when I start talking about it, a lot of times it just busts people's paradigm wide open, and they don't even, they have to stop right there. But that's what happens, and not just to me, to so many others that I've spoken with. And it
So
was
you
just
feel like, so that's an interesting detail that I haven't heard that much, that you felt like, explain that again and maybe fuller detail. You felt like you'd start to, was this the paralysis, that are they putting you into the paralysis at this point, where you start to feel tingling, and then you'd start to feel like you are disassembling almost? Is that how you're describing
I
it?
don't know about the tingling. It was put into a state of waking paralysis, so I couldn't move or speak. I no longer had control of my own body.
So you didn't feel
Except
tingling.
see.
Some people describe the paralysis almost like Novocaine, like it feels like this tingling.
Yeah. I
So
don't
it wasn't like
really
that.
remember that for me, but I think it's different for everyone too. I mean, people, I
Mhm.
think, notice things differently, because certainly that low vibrational hum feeling, I still was aware, can feel my body. I just couldn't move it. It was like an invisible straitjacket. You know what I mean? It's so
Mhm.
there was just a force that was making it so that I could not move. But my body still had feeling.
But
Um,
but then you felt like something really extraordinary happened, like you felt
oh,
like,
definitely. Yeah.
and describe that again, you felt like you were
It's like this
disassembling.
low vibrational hum that just got lower and lower and lower. And it felt like, it's so hard to describe because we don't have anything like this
Mhm.
here that happens to us. But it was like my body was ball bearings almost. It just was this like almost a vibrational.
Like you
It's
felt
so
like
hard
you
to
were in,
describe,
like you felt like
like
you
a
were in
bazillion little pieces.
pieces.
Hmm.
And do you think that was kind of what they're doing in order to move you through the solid matter of the ceiling or the window or whatever it was in your case? That
It seemed to be. And they never explained those things to me. That's just what was happening at that time. So I'm assuming that had something to do with it.
and
And
then
I
did
do
you
have a
see?
friend who is a physics researcher who recently came forward to me with a paper about how vibration can actually separate molecules and things. So that I
Mm,
haven't read through it all
hmm,
yet, but it seems pretty interesting, and it kind of
that's
fits into that. After he heard me speaking about it, he's like, I did more research, and just it's pretty amazing. So it kind of makes sense. Yeah.
And then now, did you see the beam of light that is typically seen? Were you brought up on the beam?
Sometimes there would be a beam of light coming through one of the windows, like a window down the hall or the window by the
Mm.
bedroom. Sometimes I did not notice any light at all. And
That's
quite often at that point, once I'd gone through, I'd see things getting farther away, but I didn't notice whether there was light or not surrounding me. Do you know what I mean? Because it was just so, I just never really paid attention to that part, I guess, if there was light or not around me. Sometimes when you're in the light, you don't know it. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
mhm. Can't see the
Unless you're
forest for the
outside it
trees.
looking at it, you don't really realize that you're actually in light.
Yeah,
So for me, I don't, recall that I was in it, but there were times when there was light coming through the windows or the far down window
a
down
very
the
powerful bright light,
hall.
like,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
uh-huh. And then I remember you mentioned an interesting detail, which I just found interesting. You were sort of brought up through the ceiling on some occasions, and you would
Mhm.
notice things on the ceiling, that
Oh yeah.
you would, and then you also saw things in the attic too. You'd never been up the attic, and
Yeah,
you
right.
knew it was up in
Right.
the attic. Explain that real quick.
Yeah, like things like the tops of picture frames, or that there was a bulletin board and the top of it was really dusty, and there was a little pin
Mhm,
up there, like a T pen. I don't know if you know what those are. They used to use them. We didn't
mhm.
have the cute little tacks we have today.
Yes.
Um, or the bugs in the glass lamp ceiling glass. Can't think of the word for it, but there would be dead bugs in there, and it had this glass etching for the design that was on it, or there were little curls in the wallpaper. I mean, just weird little things
Mhm.
that just struck my memory. Like I knew that there was an old dollhouse in my aunt's closet that I knew was in there because I'd seen it. I'm like, how do you know that's in there? You know what I mean? Really weird things
Sometimes they
that,
brought you through. Sometimes they brought you through a closet. So this
or
wasn't
through
in
a
the attic.
wall or a window. Oh, there were things
Yeah.
up there too, just the
Mhm.
boxes and weird things. Yeah, just, it's just so I'm watching things get further away, like pictures or the house or things like that. And so
What
it's
about the
always,
sensation? I've heard a contactee in particular talk about when you actually go through the wall. There's a weird, unsettling sensation
mhm.
that some people have described. Do you recall anything like that? And
Oh, it's incredibly unsettling. Definitely. It's just
Mhm.
because it's happening and you feel something happening,
Mhm.
but your mind doesn't want to accept that it's happening,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. So
Which
there's
might
this cognitive
account.
dissonance that starts to set in, and you're like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. And often at that point, I would get, I would go into like a sleep state. And I think because I would get upset or because I would get so panicked or trying to break out of the paralysis that I was in, because this is all we're talking, their will versus ours. Then if I was breaking out of that, that might have been dangerous. I have no idea. But that's a point where quite often I'd be put down into a sleep state and I wouldn't wake up until I was where they were taking me. So sometimes I would wake up on an exam table. Sometimes I would wake up walking
Mhm.
down towards these elevator doors. Different things, different times.
So sometimes you would go into the sleep state even
Mhm.
prior on the way up, you would go into the
Oh,
sleep
yeah, yeah.
state. And do you think that the sleep state was induced, or was
Mm.
the trauma just causing your brain to compartmentalize the memories and you just don't remember it? Or do you
Mm.
think it was induced? It was.
It could be some compartmentalization, but at that point, I was really good at having I'd have once when I was about 6 years old, I had a real just breakdown. I had been trying to talk about what was happening to me, and this'll link back to that compartmentalization.
Mhm.
And I was trying to tell people, my parents, the school, friends, whatever, what was happening and without good vocabulary behind it. And so on one of the times when they took me into the backyard of my grandparents' house. And we're in the backyard on one side, and there's a clothesline that goes across the yard. And they show me, and this is called a screen memory. So you're probably familiar with that, but it's the way I can describe it best is like now we have like VR, virtual reality or VR. It's like putting on a set of VR goggles. It's so real. And at the time, we didn't have anything like that in the 60s. Okay. It was very far out. So it would looked all too real to me. But they showed my family being walked out in front of me, and they're on the other side of this clothesline. And it was odd because I knew not all of those family members were there that night, so it had to have been, a screen memory, but looking back. But, and they told me that I had to be good, I had to stop talking about it, or they would hurt my family, and they sprayed something on the backs of their necks, and then they were beheaded in front of me, and
By the Grays?
the
Or
little graves were the ones that were with me at that juncture, at that
and
point.
who
So
was I'm just curious, like, what were you seeing as far as who was doing the beheading?
it
And
was whatever they sprayed on their necks, and then it they sprayed it. They sprayed the stuff on the back of their necks, and then walked away, and then their heads went off in front of me.
okay, so they
Wow.
didn't cut their head.
It was one of
That's
the
in
most
and it
terrifying, horrifying. Um, I was a little kid, and here I'm
yeah.
seeing this happen to my family, and I
Mm.
I lost it.
But
Um,
that was extremely traumatic to the point where and I wanna come to the compartmentalization, aspects, so don't forget about,
yeah,
so
this links into
go
that.
on, yeah. Um, so you felt like so I have this theory, I'll just, put this on the table right now, so concerning the altered states, uh, that, and I think your perspective is, you're never in, like, a dreamlike state, you're always, fully conscious, it's very physical. But yet people do go through this transition where, they're kind of in a normal state of consciousness, and then all of a sudden, um, something happens in terms of your state of consciousness. Memories open up that you didn't have the previous moment. You kind of remember, oh, I remember this, and you remember the times you were taken before. I have this theory that they might be in some kind of way. I don't know if you know anything about trauma-based mind control, and how elite, black ops or secret societies, maybe even, will induce dissociative identity disorder into a person by creating really traumatic, abusive experiences at a very young age, prior to the age of 5, and this compartmentalizes the memory and creates an alter, which can be triggered.
Right. Yeah, I have a chapter about that in the book, actually. Yeah.
Oh, really? And I've just wondered that if that's what maybe that's what they're doing, how some people don't remember anything, they create an alter, compartmentalize, part of the brain. And maybe they trigger that alter before the abduction experience. And just like, a trauma-based mind control victim, when they're used for whatever it is, maybe as a sex slave or what have you, everything that happens when they're in that altered state, stays within that compartment in their brain. And so they don't remember. And that might also account for why, when they, have sort of vague recollections of it, it seems very dreamlike and a very kind of vague memory. So do you wonder that if some of the traumatic, I've wondered about some of the experiences that the Greys put people through seem just almost like they're intended to cause pain and suffering, like it's not just a byproduct of the whatever kind of procedure they're putting them through. They almost want to create intense trauma, maybe, I'm thinking, to split the mind, to fragment the mind into a compartment. Do you wonder if that experience, seeing your family being beheaded like that, could have related to?
Right. I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. Because that was an attempt to get me to stop talking. And there was this constant, be good and things will be okay, fall out of line, and there's always punishment associated. And it was a part of this grooming process that I talk about and write about. And because that next week, back at school, they find me huddled in the corner of a bathroom stall, just holding on my knees, just rocking. I won't talk to anyone. I won't come out. They had to call my mother to come get me. She came to get me. She coaxed me out of the bathroom. And I just kept saying, I don't want them to take me. I don't want them to touch me. And so she took me to the doctor. Remember, this is in the 60s and 70s. So it was a different time. The doctor examines me. He says, whatever, she's been through, some sort of trauma, emotional trauma. She's young. She'll forget. She'll be fine. That was the answer to things back then. It was a different time. I, at that point, realized there's no one who's going to be able to help me. I wasn't going to be able to reach out to anyone to help me, and I didn't want to risk hurting my family. I really split at that point, and not into like split personalities like something from a TV show, but I really did split into dissociating to the point that I had a part of me that was present for when I was taken, and a part of me that was just present for every day, everything else. And the fact that I could dissociate like that and just really say, hey, I'm just not going to emotionally engage when they're taking me, I think is the reason that I remember as much as I do. Because when people emotionally engage, that's when they shut them down. And when I wasn't engaging emotionally, when I wasn't reacting, because we're talking about the way that they communicate isn't with words like ours. They're words, but they're words that are sent mentally. So I don't like to use the word telepathy because that implies reading someone's mind, and that's not at all what's going on when they speak. And when I would speak to them, it was a very intentional speak from the mind. So I'm intentionally directing a conversation at Todd or at Jim or at somebody else, and they're intentionally directing a conversation back at me, just without these kinds of words. It's just mentally. And so when I was in that part of me that didn't engage emotionally, I was also not engaging in any back talk or any conversation or any crying or anything else. I was just flat. And so they didn't have to worry about harnessing me into a state of, you're not going to remember this. You're not traumatized. You're fine. Right. And I think that's why I remember as much as I do. And I've spoken with others because that was my theory. And it seems to line up with other people who've had the similar experiences.
Okay. So did you have anything to say, Todd? Or I didn't want to cut you off. Okay.
Sorry.
No,
That was a lot. I'm sorry.
I'm like, wow.
Yeah. So you don't think that they created DID with you? Don't think that you have an alter, an amnesic barrier in there somewhere?
Oh, I'm sure there's things I don't remember, and that the human mind is beautiful in that it will shield you from some of the most darkest, difficult memories. And I remember a lot of dark, difficult things. And then there are other dark, difficult things that are here, but I refuse to allow myself to let them surface, to relive them, to think about them, to talk about them, because they're just too far. I've shared some things in the book, but there are some things I won't ever share because they're just too far and they're too dark. And that's okay. It doesn't need to be shared to get the point across and to share the information. It's not going to help anyone. I think when we're sharing information is one thing, and then it gets to a point where it's more of a fascination and it's just eerie, and that's not what I'm here for. So for me, I'm sure that, and I know that there are government programs where they're doing that, and they've done that with people. And fortunately for me, I wasn't part of one of those programs that I know of.
It seems like just by virtue of the fact that you have a lot of conscious memory recall without the aid of regression would seem that, maybe you're right about that.
Yeah.
Although, and I want to just float this out here too. Some people feel, this was John Mack who suggested this, that in these moments during an abduction, when we feel like we're going into the sleep state or we're blacking out, as is described by many abductees, we're actually going into the compartment or the altered state. And when some people go through this during a regression, they never went to sleep. They were conscious the whole time. They found out later, or at least, if you believe memories that come from
well, that's true. And I think that's right. And I think the reason is they have this ability to, they would get in my face and be like, you're not going to remember this, and I don't know what they were talking about because I don't remember what happened before. I remember them giving me that mental command. So they have this ability to, with the power of suggestion, once they've kind of harnessed who you are and how they're connecting into you, then they can harness some of those things where they know you're probably going to do or say something about this. So they're going to make sure you don't. And it kind of goes hand in hand with things like the UFO brain fog, which is what I call when I would be taken, and others experience this as well. Again, a lot of people I've spoken with have gone through this. I describe it as it's like walking through molasses, mentally and physically. So you can't, when I'm being taken and there would be other abductees there, we couldn't communicate the things we wanted to each other. We couldn't reach out to each other because there's just this difficulty.
Yeah. And so at moments you felt like there was an impulse to try and reach out to another abductee. And then what would happen when
I couldn't get that thought to complete as to how I was going to do it? And I couldn't get my physical body to respond to my commands fast enough to actually do it. When they're going, no, you're going this way. And they're like, you need to go find your handler. And that command was stronger than my will to reach out to someone else. Plus, I also knew I was not supposed to talk to the other people there, the other abductees or the humans that were working alongside these entities. And if I did, I would be punished, or a family member could be hurt or punished. And that's just typical grooming behavior that, even child traffickers and things like that will do that with people, just in a regular scenario, in a human scenario. And that was, and then we were used, myself and other abductees, and things were done to us in front of the people who were there working. And they would say, you don't want this to happen to your wives, your daughters, your girlfriends. And that gets a little dark. So I won't go into the details of that, but I do write about it. Let's just say that it wasn't something you would ever want for someone you know or love, or even someone you don't love or don't know. You know what I mean? And I understand, for a while I had a hard time with the fact that there were humans there And I didn't trust people, and I never wanted to trust people because I'm like, why didn't anyone ever help me or any of us? And then I realized as I became an adult and was in the working community and I was working in the tech industry and I had to start signing NDAs or have background checks done, or you're going to be on this project and you can't talk about it. I'm like, you know how easy it would be to get someone to say, hey, we're going to give you a raise and put you in this great, awesome project. And you're just thinking normal projects, right? So you sign the NDA and you get the raise and you go into this new project. And before you know it, you're in something like a deep underground military base and there's non-human entities and there's abductees and you can't do anything about it because number one, you pretty much signed your life away. And number two, they're going to come after your family and they're going to pick people who have families and children and people they love and people they care about. And so to that end, that's a very effective tool to keep people quiet and to keep people from doing anything. And there are those few individuals, every now and then who would try to reach out or try to help someone or try to do something. And they, and I've heard stories about people trying to do that and they didn't come to good ends. So, I can understand now, but it took me a long time to have any level of trust for people at all. There was a lot of forgiveness that I had to do and a lot of coming to terms with just the reality of the world and how people are and good versus evil. And, like I said, I had a really amazing, good angelic experience. So I know that there's really good out there too. But, and that's something I can talk about as well. And if you want to hear something that's a little more positive and a little more light.
Before we end, we should go into that. Maybe we'll at the end.
Yeah,
we'll something positive. Let's go back to the typical experience. So you're levitated off the bed into a beam. All right. So sometimes you're going into a craft, other times you're going into an underground type of facility. Let's go to the craft type experiences. Are you brought up through the bottom of the craft? Is there memories where you remember the full, breadth of going up into the bottom of the craft, or are you usually blacking out?
Yeah, that one is a tough one because I don't have any ship memories of like ships landing in the yard or anything like that, and the outside of them. My memories are being inside.
Are you sure that they were ships? Then you sure that you
wherever
I
know.
circular?
Yeah, I mean, again, you're gonna have to reference back to the material. I know that I was in ships because these were transport vehicles that I was on over and over again. These vehicles were alive, basically. They responded to where I moved. They responded to where I sat. When
How did they respond?
to a wall or something, if it was one that looked like it was sloping down, I could walk over to the corner and it would accommodate me. So I didn't have to bend down. Do you know what I mean?
How would it accommodate you? The ceiling
just
raised
moved.
up,
It just
the walls would move.
I don't know how it worked, but it was clearly like a living organism. So I could move to a part that looked like there's no way I could walk over there by where those, look like sort of window things were. And it's accommodating my size. Now, is it me or is the ship? I don't know, and a lot of that stuff's not shared. There were, these ships have this biological essence to them where I really believe they were alive. They were like a living thing. Now, whether it was a living construct, a biological construct, which is what I believe the grays are. So the shorter grays, like I said before, the ones that are kind of cookie cutter, they're the only entities that all looked the same and didn't ever seem to change. They're the ones that would come to get me and be with me to the point of where I was being taken. And I believe those entities are a biological construct. Like we can make skin in a lab, right? And I believe these to be like an avatar, a biological construct that were designed to hold anything from AI to another entity to a demonic entity. What I believe, and Todd, you may be familiar with this from the Book of Enoch, that when the Nephilim were killed, since they were from neither a heavenly realm nor an earthly realm, because they were mixed, those are the spirits that were doomed to just roam the earth, and they're probably millions and millions and millions of them. Yes. And that's what we call today demons. there are things that are demonic, and then there are things that are demons, and demons are defined in those books as those spirits. And I think even those could be what's in those suits, because they want to be in a body. They want to be in something, because they're just kind of, they can't do much without something physical to be in. And those gray suits, those little gray meat suits, they're so restrictive. I mean, their mouths don't open. They're just, it looks like a uniform. It just looks like a uniform, and they're so spindly and everything. But, and you think about it, when we hear during the congressional hearings, yes, we have crashed craft. Yes, we have biologics. If those grays are the ones that are during the transport, they're the ones that are there when people are taken and dropped off, and that craft crashes, what are they going to get? They're going to get an empty gray meat suit. They're not going to get anything of value. They're not going to lose anything of value from the point of view of the non-human entities. And whoever retrieves that craft is not going to get anything very useful either. They're just some biological tissue that was created in a lab. Big deal. Right. So it makes sense that that's why they're using them and the way that they're using them.
And just to get, Todd, do you want to bring up our gray drawings? So just to get a good description of the grays you're talking about, because there are sort of different types of grays. So there's two like major categories that people describe. One being the upside down pear-shaped head grays that have a head that looks like an upside down pear. Were these grays? Do you think of that type? Did they have the almond wrap around large eyes?
Yeah, they were very large eyes, and they were
almond shaped.
They were like
almond shaped or round?
Kind of. No, they had went down to a point, so they were kind of like that shape, but they were huge, and they just looked like a screen. There was no eye there. I mean, it could have been like a screen of a sunglass. You know what I mean? They were just dark. They were solid.
And do you remember, were the chins sort of rounded, or were they pointed chins?
They weren't pointed at all.
They
weren't like, it was just a bulbous head with, there was a distinction for the chin, but it wasn't like a point at all.
Okay, I see. Yeah, interesting.
Jim, I can't even find the pictures right this minute.
Okay, that's all right.
Look, when you said that, see if I had anything like that. I don't generally have anything like that around because I find it very disturbing to look at pictures of them. The first time I saw anything like that was when Whitley Strieber's book Contact, as a Communion, came out. I was at a bookstore with friends, and I saw that book from across the bookstore. And I had a full-on panic attack, and I had to leave the store. And I remember just sitting out front. I think it was what was the name of the store then? It was before Barnes & Noble. And sitting out there with just my head between my legs, trying not to throw up.
Oh, wow.
And they don't understand why I'm having this panic attack, right? And what am I going to say? I just saw the things that have been taking me my whole life. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody believes you. So it became, very difficult at that point when I started seeing pictures of the things of that are the stuff of my nightmares at night. The reason I couldn't look out a window at night, the reason I couldn't walk past or through the house at night alone or without something, to feel safe, come on, waking the dog up, making sure the dog's with me when I walk through the house, silly things like that. Not that that's going to help me until I figured out how to stop them. So I don't have a lot of pictures of those types of things like the grays around just because of that. Because it is very traumatic for people who have been taken. No matter where we are in our walk, no matter where we are in the process of stopping it, and I've been able to stop it, it's very difficult.
Now, do you remember experiences with the eyes in particular? Is there anything you can say about so many people describe interesting things about the eyes?
Definitely. When they wanted to do some kind of control thing, often they would get like right in
real close.
Yeah, like eyes to eyes. And I don't know what they were doing with that, but it would be either to induce a screen memory or tell me I wasn't going to remember something, or, you're fine, calm down. You're not scared. You're not hurt. You're not this, or you feel that, to induce a feeling or a memory or thought or something like that. It's just a control type of thing.
Yeah. I don't know if we have that clip, Todd. Well, we don't have to play it, but Dan Burrish, I don't know if you've ever heard of Dan Burrish, talked about what they're doing. In his opinion, he was someone who was a government insider who worked or took tissue. He was a biologist. He took tissue samples from a gray who was in a containment facility, and he felt what they were doing is in training you, and he would say they thump you, and they sort of bring you down your brainwave state. They sort of bring you down onto their sort of wavelength or sort of brainwave state, and then once you were there, they could start to communicate. And
Interesting.
But there was also a kind of hypnotic element to this. Like I think there is some kind of control aspect, I think, to this. And a lot of grays say, they couldn't describe clearly why, but they felt that somehow their eyes were controlling in some kind of way, or were trance-inducing or something like that.
Yeah, definitely trance-inducing. I would say that. Yeah. But as far as any of the rest of that, I have no idea. I mean, I think everyone has different experiences with it, and they haven't really shared a lot of what they're doing or why in that respect, as far as some of those little details go.
And so,
okay, we're good. We've been about an hour. Okay.
Oh, is this that clip? Oh, this looks like the beginning of the video, or this is the whole video. This isn't the clip.
It's not the clip.
I pretty much described it in full, exactly what he said, word for word. So we could just move on. They thump you, and in his opinion, yeah, they're entraining you. They're hypnotically entraining you.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. I've never looked into that. I'll have to, Jim, you'll have to share with me offline after this what that is, so I can look at it and see, and maybe that's something we could talk about again, because that's really interesting, but I have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
So getting back, so you'd sometimes wake up in the craft. Was it a metallic craft, and were the small gray beings still, would you see again the small gray beings inside the craft or enclosure?
From inside, I have no idea what the craft looked like on the outside. So I don't know. From the inside, it was just a lot of beige neutral tones. The small grays were in there. The ones, there was one particular craft I remember pretty well, that there was it was towards the front and to the left is where they were piloting. And they were definitely, some of them looked different than these little cookie cutter grays, but I'm not entirely sure if they were, because I never saw them out of that little, it's like this weird seat. It's like an egg seat. Is all the best way I can describe it, like the half egg seat, and haven't been, and it kind of forms the body. But
so sometimes you find yourself right in that seat and not on a table. Other times you're on a table, but sometimes you wake up and you're in an egg shape.
Sometimes no. I was talking about the seats they were in. The seats on these craft were they were indented seats. It was like benches, but they were like indents where people would sit. So there was this slight indent, and it felt like it formed around me when I'd sit in it. And there was just more than just me in there. Obviously, there was
normally they were kind of like molded seats then, right?
Yeah. That's thank you. I was trying to think of a word that made sense. Yeah. And it didn't look like a person shape, but it was just definitely concave. And then I just remember sitting in it, feeling like it formed to me, almost holding me in, if that makes sense.
Yes. In the same kind of way, maybe, that the craft would sort of accommodate.
Yeah. That's why I say they're alive. There's something very, very physical and alive in nature about this craft, for sure.
Okay, now, and were you experiencing, let's take the typical experience when you would wake up on a table.
Okay.
Were they doing sort of the typical things, sort of several things that are most commonly reported? Sometimes it seems like they're removing eggs. Other times it seems like they're maybe reinserting an embryo that has maybe been genetically altered. And then other times they're taking out a fetus, which they then show you.
So are you talking about my experiences or someone else?
No, okay. Well, I'm saying these. Well, no, I'm not talking about your experience. I'm saying in general, these are the real common experiences. does this correspond to your experience?
Yes, I write about that extensively. That's where the title of the book, Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest, comes from. And if the fourth movie in L.A. Marzulli's series on the abductions, that one, I do an extensive interview about that as well. Also, there's more about that in, I think, the 6th and the 10th movies in that series. But as far as that goes, yes, I had experiences. I'll kind of go back to the first one. And I know I've got about another 30 minutes to go. So if we've got pertinent questions, make sure we're pulling those forward from you guys and from the audience. When I was in my early 20s, I got pregnant, and it wasn't like I couldn't get pregnant, and I was married at the time, so it wasn't something that couldn't happen naturally. And I was very excited, and I went to the doctor, and it was confirmed by a doctor by the tests they did in the office at that time, which were blood tests. And I got a prescription. Back in the day, we used to get a prescription for prenatal vitamins. And then and I was just going through the normal pregnancy. So I'm about 3 months in, I know I'm pregnant. I feel the pregnancy. I've been to the doctor. That's been confirmed. We've heard a heartbeat. There's a baby here. About 3 months in, that night I got up and I did not feel good. I was spotting just a little bit. Nothing happened. Nothing came out of my body, but I was in pain. And so my husband at the time took me to the emergency room. And at this time, everybody's records weren't on computers or anything yet either. So we're back in the days of paper. Yeah. And they couldn't find a heartbeat. So they did an ultrasound and they couldn't see a fetus. And so they said, "Ma'am, did you lose this baby at home?" And I'm like, "No, nothing came out of me. I would know if I lost this baby." There's no heartbeat, nothing on the ultrasound. And I was clearly still pregnant, I was testing pregnant, everything. So they're like, "Okay, well, we're going to have to do a D&C to make sure we remove anything in there so you don't get an infection or anything like that." And that's not something they do lightly, because for a woman of my age, and I was very young, to do that can damage your uterus and make it hard to have babies in the future. So they went and did that procedure, and they came back to me and said, "Ma'am, are you sure you're pregnant?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm sure. You can call my doctor. Here's her number. Here's the information. We heard the heartbeat. We did all the tests. Why?" And they're like, "Because there was no fetal tissue in your uterus. Your uterus was completely clean." And I was devastated. My baby was just gone. I didn't get to mourn that baby. I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl. And I couldn't say to those doctors what was going on, because my next trip would have been a couple of floors up to a 72-hour hold if I'd have done that. So I had to deal with this by myself, with no support. And it was devastating. I mean, my baby was just gone, and that's horrible. And that happened multiple times.
Yeah, that's the key thing. So this has happened multiple times to you, where you were pregnant and then not pregnant.
Right.
Yeah. So that's that's what I mean. I find it hard to, at least with the Greys in particular, the ones that are doing these reproductive things, hybridization type abduction events.
It wasn't just the Greys, though. The ones doing this to me they were all there working together.
Okay, so you would typically see Nordic being. Are you talking about the Nordics?
I'm talking about all the different types that I encountered that were all there working together. I mean, there were different types, and the Greys, outside of these little short ones that would come to get me, they were different heights. They had eyes that moved. They had faces that had expression. They all looked different. They were different sizes. Some looked more feminine. Some looked more masculine. There were reptilians, and they were beautiful. They weren't these ugly, gross creatures that people think of. There were the insectoid types, which were very freakish and scary to me. But and there were Nordic, and there were some Nordics who looked kind of like grays, and some grays who looked kind of reptilian, and some reptilians who look, I could tell there was some crossover and just all different sizes and shapes and kinds. So I kind of lumped them into those 4 categories, but there could be just thousands of categories of these things. But that's kind of where they fall into, like a very generalization of categories.
And would you typically see like a hodgepodge like that during a typical abduction experience? You would see
Oh, yeah.
reptilian, insecto, really?
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
The insectulin ones would always kind of be off. And when I was little, I called them the corner sitters because they were always off sitting in the corner somewhere, like crouched almost, because they had these giant limbs and heads. Like, I can't look at okay, this is really weird, but I can't stand hammerhead sharks on TV or an aquarium or anywhere, because something about them, it seems so weird that this is a connection, but something about them reminds me so much of these insect type.
Wow.
yeah,
And
I've
I think
heard
it's the eye
people-
placement, but I'm not sure. So if you've ever heard anyone else say that, let me know, because for me,
I
that
have heard someone mention, yeah,
Have you
vague,
really? Oh, cool. Okay.
yeah, I have a vague recollection of someone bringing up hammerhead sharks.
Yeah, that one freaks me out really bad.
Uh,
So they were always off in the distance. As far as hierarchy, no one ever told me of any hierarchy. The only thing I know for sure is that these short little grays were just meat suits, because I saw them empty. I saw them stacked up. There was, 3 or 4 of them once by this one kind of part of this wall. And I think there was like 3 or 4 of them, and they didn't look flat or anything like that, but they were non-animated. Do you know what I mean? So there was definitely nothing in them. But as far as the rest of them go, the reptilians are very tall, very muscular, very, my handler was reptilian, and I felt very comfortable and safe to a degree around him, because I had this very Stockholm syndrome type relationship going on with him. So
and you considered it beautiful looking.
yeah, their skin was like shimmery almost. It was like opalescent almost. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't gross. It wasn't like picking up the lizards we have here in the backyard. It wasn't like that. They were they were physical beings designed for a very specific way and a specific purpose. Not that I know what that is, but I didn't find it ugly by any means.
And you regarded one particular reptilian as your handler, and
Yes, he was always with me. Yeah, he didn't have a name. It was the best I can describe it as like a mental name, like an imprint. So when I was little, I called him Toby, and I don't know why, and I don't know where that came from, and I don't know how I came up with that, because it makes no sense whatsoever. But I know it drove my grandma crazy when I tried to talk about him, because she couldn't figure out who it was. But other than that, it was just an imprint. Like whenever I'd be taken and get off the elevators, or what I called when I was little. So when I would be taken, and different times I remember different parts of it, but sometimes there were these literally in a building going down this sloped concrete towards these elevators, getting on them still at this point, usually with little grays. And these elevators just go down and down and down, and no underground, there's no windows, there's no sunlight, there's no nothing. And it's like this constant kind of cold temperature. I just remember always being cold, even though it wasn't like freezing or anything like that. And then I'd get on what I called the sideways elevators, which just freaked me out, because I didn't understand. Remember when I was little, vehicles were loud. Trains, cars, buses, everything made a lot of noise. Not like it is today. And these went side to side, or up at an angle, or down at an angle, and took all these crazy directions. And in my little mind, I'm like, how can elevators do this? And I'm scared, but there's these little bench seats. And I just remember digging my fingers into the ribbing on the seat sometimes, because I was just like trying to figure this out. And then it'd get off, and it'd be this big open area, and it's so big, it's bigger than like a stadium and an airport and all that stuff put together. And these facilities are massive, and there's just people coming in, and I knew where my handler was just instantly, and I knew I just walked towards him. I knew where I just felt
He would
draw
normally.
magnetic draw. I just knew where to go. And so no one told me where to go. I knew where to go. I don't know how everyone else knew where to go, but they all seemed to know which line they were supposed to get in and which way they were going. And there were off of there were hallways or elevators or stairways and big rooms and little rooms. And it's so massive that like I could never draw it because it's incredibly complex and massive and huge.
Wow.
It wouldn't make sense. It doesn't even make sense to me sometimes. But there was this one area where my handler and I would go that was, I could tell it was very different. It seemed very old. It was like carved in the stone out of like what looked like stone. And there were like even like seat kind of areas that were in the stone, and then rooms off of it that were out of stone that were smaller. And we were there through that part a lot, often.
And you would see a lot of humans, regular Earth humans, walking around. Yeah. So this was.
Some were working. Some were wearing like lab coats. Some were wearing like what looked like military fatigues, but not with any specific military branch insignia. Some were in these really benign, like shirt and pants kind of smock outfits that, and not like scrubs, but as benign as scrubs. They were just really beige, kind of like this weird beige brown color. It's hard to describe that. And just benign, just really muted, just almost as if they were just trying to blend in. A lot of curved, clean white walls. Just a lot of people, a lot of different things going on. A lot of things going on.
And do you feel that this was? I mean, what more? Like, do you have any sense of, was it some part of the government? Was it, or were they multinational? Did they all seem American? Or
no way of knowing that. Yeah, no way to know, except, I mean, clearly there was some involvement, whether it was an offshoot of our government, an unofficial, or what have you. No idea. But when you look back at Eisenhower, you look back at the Greada agreements, where agreements were made to exchange humans in exchange for technology, and they could, just observe and study humans and animals. But, clearly when you look at cattle mutilations and the suffering of these innocent animals and children, it goes far beyond observing and studying. And that's why I can't get behind this benevolent space brother stuff, because benevolent actions aren't kidnapping little children and murdering innocent animals and scaring people. And if they're so far advanced and they have so much knowledge and information, which I know that they are advanced, then they can find better ways to sit down and communicate and share information. I know they can because I've communicated with them. I know they can because I've been around them. I know they can, but that's not what they're trying to do. And from just the time and the experience with them, it's, this is a whole nother agenda. This is not a benevolent space brother agenda. This is a very singular agenda on their part, and they're not trying to come here just to, these particular ones are not our loving space brothers, and they're not our ancestral seeders. And I know that too, because when I was able to stop it, I looked at them and I said, wait a minute, I was finally, everything was starting to fall into place, and I'm older, and I'm done. I'm just so done with this. Right. And I've had this near-death experience, and I've gone through all this stuff, and now all the lights are starting to come back on for me. And I'm like, you guys have the same creator I do. And this is a very legalistic society in the spiritual realm and in the whole, all of creation. Right. And I'm like, that means that if I call on my creator to stop you, and I call on him because he's in me and I'm in him, and, I'm with him, then you have to stop. And they were just destroyed by the fact that I figured it out, confirmed that I'm right, and that was it. And they couldn't bother me anymore. And I can just, because I believe in my heart, and because I know this, I can call on Jesus in my head, in my heart, audibly, and they have to leave, and they do. And they've tried to come back, and they've tried to convince me through different means, but they can't. And so that was kind of the linchpin in the understanding of who and what they are, and that we all have the same creator. And that was just massive for me.
So Karin, let me ask this question. When was the last time that you were contacted by these these ETs?
Oh, let's see. It wasn't too long ago, and it was in contact. I gotta remember how long ago was it? Maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago. And it was the handler himself trying to reach out to me and to tell me that he needed me. He was trying to appeal to my sense of love and kindness and caring and all that. Like I'll help anyone who needs help. I'll give my last dime to someone if that's what they need. And that he's telling me that he needed me and he was going to die without me there. And it was just, and he's like this close to my face. And I'm like, I don't give you permission to bother me. And in Jesus' name, you have to leave me alone. And that was it. He was gone and he hasn't tried again.
No, go ahead, Jim. Go ahead.
I was going to say, how did he contact you? He appeared again in your bedroom, or he was
it was. I know this is crazy. Yeah, I was taken again back into, and it was back into that one area where it was the very, and I'm not. This was either I think this was really an astral visitation, and not a taken out of, but it was definitely an astral. And and then we get into now we're talking realms and dimensions and everything else, which we're still already crossing over. And I've done that with the near-death experience and everything else. And it's a really similar experience to that, except kind of, but different. Yeah.
Now, what do you believe their end game is?
I like to quote the late Dr. Chuck Missler on that one. He says, Satan's outnumbered 2-1. He's building an army. And I really think that holds water here. Whether it's to create more hybrid entities, whether it's to deceive people and leave them away from the truth of what's really going on. If you can convince people that it's okay to kidnap 5-year-old kids, then boy, you can probably convince them of anything. And, so I think there's a lot of deception going on there. And that's really what I think the end game is to get it back. They're trying to take back the birthright of this place, this planet, this earth, this place we call home.
Yeah, because you would think that if they wanted something, they would just take it. But it seems like they're doing it. They're doing
because
it.
We have the birthright. Yeah, they can't. It's a very legalistic society. It's God's kingdom. It's everything He's created, and there are rules that must be followed, and procedures that must be followed, and things that can and cannot be done. When you think about the vampire lore of old, and this gets into what my friend Vicki Joy Anderson writes about in her book, They Only Come Out at Night, where she explores sleep paralysis and all these different kinds of agreements and things like that people make, unknowing or unknowing, and that have to be broken, or agreements that have to be made for things to happen. It's the same thing. When we were born, we were given this earth as our birthright, but we can give that away, and what we're doing, and it's part of that process of slowly chipping away at our birthright so that they can have it back. And that's really what I believe is happening.
Do you think also that like if we look at all the people that are missing, that just disappear out of thin air, never to be seen again, do you think this is the work of them?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm trying to think of the name of the author. Oh, shoot. I have one of his books in the other room, but he wrote, or he did a little documentary called The 800,000, I think it is. I think it's on YouTube. If you look it up, it's either on YouTube or on Prime Video. And what is his name? It's on the tip of my tongue. If I remember it, I'll post it on your page. And about just that very thing. And that's what he believes too. And I believe that as well, that has a lot to do with it. I think a lot of these people never return.
Where do you think they're going? Some people think they're being taken off planet and used as slaves, or maybe the people that you're seeing. You saw a lot of people down there, right, populating these underground caverns. Yeah. Do you think that they're, populating these places with, they're taking people and they're putting them into service,
I think biological material, I think is workforce, I think is all different kinds of things are possible. The same reason, that's why a lot of the cattle mutilations take place. Bovine blood can be used in place of human blood. Bovine tissue can be used in place of human tissue. And based on some of the other things that I've witnessed and saw when I was there, I believe they're using some of that in the process for creating hybrids. Because, as women, our bodies are genetically designed to reject a fetus at about 3 months if there's something wrong. And that's why they take them at that time. But then they've got to create an artificial womb, which is ectogenesis, which we can do. We absolutely have the technology to do that right now here, but they've been doing it for a lot longer. And then they take that fetus and they bring it to maturity in an artificial womb. And I do believe bovine blood, possibly human blood. I'm O negative. My blood was something that they were always very, very interested in. I was told I was special, but so was everybody else there. So, that's, again, is another part of grooming. So that doesn't mean a lot. But
interesting. And it kind of brings up the whole soul contract thing too.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So yes. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so many things tie into it, and I think whatever you're talking about in the supernatural and the paranormal and all of that, and you guys have explored and researched so much of that. Tell me if you agree. It all comes back to the same thing always. It all connects back in. It's all different tentacles of the same thing.
Yes.
And if we start to understand it, then we'll be able to protect ourselves better. And for me, that's, number one goal. Let's make it okay to talk about. Let's help each other be safe. Because it's like I say, you don't know if you're going to get a good one or a bad one. Don't call on him, because it's like, walking down the street, a carjacker or a thief or a rapist or a serial killer doesn't wear a t-shirt saying what he is and what he does. He's going to slowly work his way into the lives of the people he or she that they're going to hurt. And they're going to do so in a very charming and possibly loving way. And people are like, I never thought in a million years that person would be a pedophile, or that person would be a rapist, or that person would be a serial killer. They were a deacon at the church. They were a teacher at the school. They were this, they were that. That's the way it works. And evil doesn't announce itself. It's going to show up as a beautiful being of light. Satan comes as an angel of light. That's a biblical reference as well. And deception is the name of the game. And we're not equipped to identify the difference between that just in general. So we've got to be super careful, because from the paranormal world, when you expose yourself to something, it can attach to you.
Absolutely.
You can bring it back to your family and your friends and your children and your loved ones. And for me, that's not something I want to do to the people that I love. So I really caution people just to be super careful. Know what you're getting involved in before you play with fire, because it could be dangerous.
Right, exactly. Now, out of all these negative things that happen to you and scary, I couldn't imagine. I have no idea. But what is a more positive message that you have gotten out of all of this? Is there a positive message that you have learned over the years?
The positive messages are that there's always hope, that we have a creator who loves us and who always has a way home and a way out for us, and just wants to protect us and keep us from being hurt. But, it's hard because we don't understand God's will. We don't understand why things happen the way they do all the time. And we live in a fallen world, and we all have free will. So, that makes it difficult at times. But definitely there's a positive message of hope that, we don't have to suffer. We do have choice. We do have a choice.
Yes, very good. Jim, do you have anything you want to
say? Did you want to go soon here, or I wanted to ask you
about... I'm going to have to, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to bug out in a few. I'm so sorry. So okay. We'll have to start wrapping up. But
just one last thing.
Final questions. Yes.
You had hybrids contact you, which you felt were your own. Mm-hmm. Could you tell that story real quick, just as an interesting story?
I don't know if I can tell it quick, but I can definitely tell it.
Okay.
Sorry, it's so dry here.
Mm.
When there were two very poignant times. One, when I was much, much younger, I was taken, and we're back in these facilities, and I'm going down a hallway that I never recalled seeing before. And this particular hallway had what looked like aquariums lining the walls. If you've ever been in like a fish store or that, okay. And it was everything when I was taken down there was very darkly lit anyway, and all seemed kind of backlit, like I could never tell where the lights were coming from. And this particular hallway had a very red hue to it. And in these, what looked like aquarium type containers, were some sort of fetuses. And, I remember just fighting that UFO brain fog feeling, that thinking through molasses type feeling, to try to really focus on what was in them, because I'm like, what is this? And I'm just trying to really see. We get to the end of this hall, and then it continues on without tanks, and there's a door on either side, and they open the door to the right of me, and I'm with, I think, a gray and a Nordic at this point. And there's this room that's the size of like a large closet, and there was a woman in there already, and she's on the floor imitating childbirth with a little baby, a little infant of some sort. And I just remember being like, what is going on? Right? It's so weird. And they hand me the gray hands me a little baby, and she says, this is your baby. It's a good baby. Hold your baby. And I remember looking at it, and it's very like dark reddish purple color. Its head is large. Its eyes are large, but it's not looking at me. But I know it's mine. I can see that it's mine, and I can feel that it's mine. It's just a mom thing. I cannot explain that to you, but any moms out there listening, you understand this, and I'm sure. And so I'm holding it up to me, just up to my body, and it wouldn't cuddle into me. It wouldn't respond to me. And I'm just like, what's wrong with my baby? What's wrong? And they're like, hold your baby. It's a good baby. And it's like a mantra. They kept repeating that. I'm like, something's wrong. What's wrong with my baby? And I just remember it wouldn't respond to me. It was like holding a brick. I mean, it just wouldn't even cuddle into me. But I'm thinking in my head, I'm keeping this baby. I'm going to take it home. I'm going to fix it. Whatever's wrong with it. This is the mom bear kicking in. And they're like, okay, I'm like, and I can tell they're going to take me out of the room. And I'm like, no, I'm keeping my baby. And they're like, no, you have to go. And I'm combative. And I think that's probably one of the first times I've really been combative with them. And I was determined to hold on to that baby. And they put me into a sleep state. And the next thing I know, I woke up at home and I didn't have that baby. That was so hard, because I'll never forget feeling that baby and thinking that I could have helped it. Sorry, that just...
No, that's okay.
I know how these stories are going to affect me. So later, much later, and I always wanted them. I wanted them no matter what. Knowing what I know about Nephilim, knowing what I know about hybrid, knowing that I know that's, only God hands out a soul. Only our Creator hands out a soul, right? That's just how it works. It was just, I don't remember how many years ago. It wasn't too long ago, maybe 8 years ago or something. 5 years ago, I can't remember. Anyway, I woke up in the middle of the night, and my kids are standing by the bed. And I have a lot of kids, so it's not unusual for there to be 4 or 5 of them home at any given time. And I sit up and I'm like, hey, and I say one of my actual kids' names, what's wrong? And then as I'm focusing and waking up, because it's kind of the middle of the night and I had been, out cold asleep, I realize, oh, wait, they're too short to be so and so and so and so and so and so. You know, I'm not gonna say my kids' names.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's you. I realize these have to be
Valid.
hybrid children because I can see it. I can already see that they're mine. Do you know what I mean? So I hit my husband really hard. I'm like, hey, and say his name, get up, look. And he will not respond. He won't wake up. I'm trying to get him up with one arm, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, you're here. And they're shorter and stockier than my actual children. They are all wearing some sort of a gray hooded, it looked like a sweatshirt kind of hoodie or something. It's not what it was, but it looks similar to that. So it was kind of partially covering over the front of their face. So it was dark, and their eyes looked black, but I couldn't tell if they were like black-eyed kids or not because I didn't have a close enough look at their eyes. There was enough light on them to see, but I could see their features. I knew they were mine. They were just too short, too stocky, and I'm like, you're here. And they're like, you have to come with us. So at this point, remember, I've stopped the abductions. I've figured that out. I've got all that work through. So they're trying to get me to go back. And now they're using my hybrid children to do it. And I'm like, no, I can't go back with you. You stay here. You can stay with me. And they're like, no, you have to come with us. And I just feel this evil coming off of them, just this anger and ugly and evil. I'm like, and I'm looking at them like, what? Why are you angry at me? You know, I just, it doesn't make sense. You know, I just can't understand why I would just get this horrible evil coming off of them. It was palpable. And I'm like, no, I can't come with you. And they start trying to levitate me off the bed. And I'm like, no, in Jesus' name, no. And just, you know, just kind of habitually said that. The second I said that, the second that came out of my mouth, boom, they're gone. My husband sits straight up in bed. He's like, what? And I'm like, oh, you know, now you're, you know, whatever they had done had put him down. I was like, oh, I can't believe you just you know, and it was a really sad but closure experience for me because I really feel like I got closure for that. I realized they didn't have, nothing about them had that human kindness about it. Nothing about that had
Nothing.
any love for me. It made me very, very sad. I am not, you know, I can't say whether they're redeemable or not or anything like that. That's not my call to make. I'm not God. I'm just a person. But what I can say is they didn't have any love for me. They didn't have any kindness for
So
me.
you don't.
And I asked them to stay. I said, I won't go with you, but you can stay with me. And that wasn't okay with them. They were not having it.
So they felt like they didn't love you at all, but they wanted to take you with them. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I think they was just trying to get me back, you know, to make an agreement to go back because I had stopped the abductions. I've stopped them from taking me. I've broken those whatever covenants and agreements and things have been made along the way, and they can't touch me anymore. They can't take me anymore. So this was just another effort to find another way around it because they knew I wanted my children. I proclaimed that, you know, to God and myself and everyone else. So they had the in to come in to my home, to cross that threshold. And then to try to invite me to come back would be me making another agreement. And I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't go back into that. No, just wasn't good. So, and there's more detail on that too, you know, in the book, or if someone has more questions on that, they can certainly reach out to me through the website. I caution people to not reach out to me on social media because I have so many messages in there and so much spam in there that it's really hard to wade through. And I do try to once every week or so, but like I missed your one the other day. I'm glad you sent it for an email because I'm like, it gets buried in there. And I hate that happens, but but I'm glad that we have other ways to communicate. So yeah, if anyone does want to discuss that further, you can reach out to me through my email.
Karin, where can they get your book?
The book is only available exclusively at lamarzulli.com. So for right now, you can only get it at lamarzulli.com or .net, LAMARZULLI.com or .net. There's a link to that on my website, and there's a link to that through my social media accounts as well. So if you look up my name on the social media, look for the blue check mark, you'll know you found me. And there'll be links to all of those things through social media or through the website. And if I'm in person somewhere, I do post events. Or if you go to L.A. Marzulli's events page, if he's going to be an event, most of the time we are there as well. So,
and I seen that there is a DVD of that.
Oh yeah, a couple of them.
Yes.
The UFO series in LA's vast library. He has 10 in the series on UFOs. Number 4 on the abductions. Number 6 is on cattle mutilations. And number 10 is What is the Truth? Those ones I am in also. And there's a special going on right now with my book where you get, I think, number 4 free with the book. So check that out on his website, because we're always trying to run specials where, have something extra to offer people. And we'll have some specials. I think I'll be in Brookville, Ohio, July 26th through 28th at the Go Therefore conference. It's just gothereforeconference.com if you want to check that out. And December, I'll be in Branson, Missouri at the Prophecy Watchers conference. So love to meet people in person. So those should be posted on my social media. But again, you can just shoot me an email if you want to know where I'll be, and I'll update you if we can't find it. But yeah, I'm hoping to see a lot of people in Brookville, Ohio, coming up in like 2 weeks. So that's almost here. So hi to all my friends, especially I know some of you tuned in tonight, and I look forward to seeing you when we get there. So.
All right. Well, fantastic. Karin, I want to thank you so much for being on here, telling us your experiences. It is such an incredible thing that you went through. I have learned a lot, and I'm probably going to get your book so I could learn more. And I try not to have the books with me because I want to hear the raw thing from.
Oh, I get that. Yes,
from people
I understand
like
that.
And then I will get the book and then I can read through it, and it's just such an incredible. And I'm sorry you got emotional right there towards.
Oh, it's okay. It happens. Sorry, it's all right. To ask any mom when we talk about our kids, that happens. So I appreciate that. Thank you for allowing that. No, and thank you guys for letting me, share. It's a lot to share. It's a lot of information. Yes. And I know we could probably go on for 2 more hours. You guys had amazing questions, probably some of the most in-depth, excellent questions I've had from any of the people I've spoken with recently. So I appreciate that so much. Thank you just for your hard work, your dedication and your research that you've done. I can tell that you guys are the real deal, and I'm excited that I get to spend time with you. So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, I thank you so much. I want to thank our viewers, our listeners, those that joined in to ask questions and just talk. Thank you all so very much. We hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. A Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure is looking to talk with ufologists, researchers, investigators, contactees, abductees, channelers, and more for upcoming shows. Or if you have stories, photos, videos, questions, suggestions, or comments, please contact us through Messenger or email us at paranomalypodcast@gmail.com. And you can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure.